Yeah, good morning, everyone who's been prompt in arriving. Thanks very much. I know you're there. I'm just literally going to give it a minute and then we'll get started. Okay, well, welcome everyone and good morning. This is the first of two webinars I'm running on writing and winning bids. The whole idea is to help you improve your bid writing experience and knowledge, and it's all part of the larger Hounslow Council Business Support Programme. We're going to run for about an hour. We've got a fair amount to get through. Essentially, my name's Noshir Desai, for those of you who don't know me, and I'll tell you a little bit about my background and a bit more about the programme as we go through. I'm of an age where I think writing things down is good, so if you want to make some notes of your own, please do that. The slides will be shared, and also commit to do something as a result of what you hear within the next hour. Commit to take some action to help you move your business forward. So it's a worthwhile use of your valuable time. Okay, so let's get started. So just a little bit about Branduin. Branduin are the organisation that I work for, and we're running the programme on behalf of Hounslow Council. As it says, we're a leading group of business advisors. We work with SMEs at all stages, from startup right through to more experience, and we're very much consultative in our approach. And essentially, what we think is different and unique about us is we all have technical experience, but additionally, we all run our own businesses as well. So we deliver these sort of programs on behalf of councils, on behalf of local chambers of commerce, business growth hubs, and we work very closely with various businesses through the stages of growth. So that's just a little bit about Branduin. The next slide is one that we're pretty proud of. It's taken us the best part of, I think, 12 years to create this slide, not on the technical side, but in terms of the businesses and the types of organizations we work with. So as you can see, there are a number of, quite well-known names: councils, chambers of commerce, growth hubs, as I mentioned, where we support with these types of programs. Okay, just a little bit about myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Noshir Desai, background in banking, 30 years for my sins. But on a serious note, I've worked with all types of businesses, from startup right through to international banks. And I also spent 4 years heading up the government team for Lloyds, where I picked up my bidding and tendering experience, where we were basically bidding for new and renewal contracts with both local authorities and central government departments. I'm an advisor with Branduin. I'm also working on other projects. I'm the project lead for a program we're running with Hammersmith and Fulham, which is a year-long project just winding up now. Similar to this, but obviously longer, delivering sessions to local SMEs to try and help them improve their bidding and tendering skills. And also, in terms of doing something good and keeping my sort of heart warm, I also run a small social care business in my local area. So that's 40 years condensed into a minute, so I guess I must have been having some fun. A little bit about the program. I'm not going to go into this in detail now, but I'll spend some more time on it later in the session. But it's quite a compact program running for about 3 months. And essentially, there are a variety of different types of support available for you as local businesses, both webinars and face-to-face sessions and one-to-one sessions. But like I said, I'll talk more about that in a few moments actually. So the one thing I didn't say is this is an interactive session. So we're looking at trying to help you, as I said, improve your bid writing skills. And it's for all types of different SME businesses. As you can see from the list, if you're in one of those particular sectors, you'll find it additionally valuable. And you'll learn a lot about the bidding and tendering process. I'll ask you to give me an idea of your tendering experience in a moment, but essentially, we'll give you the tips and tools to help you improve your bid writing skills to then hopefully win a larger share of contracts. And a term you may or may not have come across is building community wealth, or community wealth building. This is a strategy that a number of councils have, and it's all about getting local businesses to be able to share in the wealth and the prosperity of their council. So Hounslow have a desire to increase their local supply chains and hopefully give you a chance of getting a greater share of their business, both in the council and in the private sector. So like I said a moment ago, it's an interactive session. It's all about giving you an edge over your competition. The sessions are interactive. So I think it's like anything in life. The more you put in, the more you'll get out. So do get involved in the little exercises I'll be running during the session. This is the first one, as it says, and I'll be running a second one in about a month's time, which is all around public sector bidding, which is subtly different in some ways to the broader bidding process. So like it says, it's based around the principles of best practice and excellence in selling. Bidding and tendering is a selling exercise. It's not an administrative exercise. And some SMEs think that all you need almost to do is fill out the forms and you're going to win the business. If you take that approach, unfortunately, you're probably not going to be on the way to a winning bid. So you're either selling yourself, you're selling your business, you're selling your services. So treat it as a sales exercise. We got quite a lot to cover this morning. So as it says, we'll cover basically the principal elements of what makes up a winning bid. I'll look at some of the reasons as to why organizations go out to tender, the sort of things they look for, making sure you get the basic information right, and then what makes up the parts of a winning bid, supported by what I like to call the golden rules. So we'll look at things like understanding questions, articulating your solution in a way that essentially shows and demonstrates value and benefits to clients. We'll look about how you provide evidence, also about researching and understanding the client. The more you know about them, the better. And finally, how you could then write a bespoke, accurate, and concise bid, because that's also important. Right, so briefly, in terms of the program, the process when you're dealing with councils, as some of you may know, and larger organizations, is you'll often be dealing with a procurement team. So you won't necessarily be dealing with the end user within the organization. So I'll show you the ways that procurement teams operate, evaluators, how they assess bids, how they look at bids. We also have an online bid capability questionnaire, and that's essentially a very short questionnaire to give us an idea of how prepared and ready you are for bidding and tendering. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes, so I would encourage you to complete that if you haven't done so already. Of course, I'll share with you tips, ideas, best practice in terms of improving your bidding skills. And like I said, it's very much a sales process in terms of you selling your offer, your business, your organization, and how you can benefit the council or the organization. And finally, there are one-to-one specialist tender advice sessions where you'll have the opportunity to talk to a specialist who can help work through the challenges you have, primarily around the bidding and tendering process, but also in terms of your wider business knowledge and experience. So there's quite a lot of support there, as you can see. What are some of the benefits? Well, just running through the list briefly, of course, we're going to talk to you and help you with your bid writing skills. We'll share with you best practice standards. So experience that I've picked up from talking to various other businesses. So it's not theoretical, it's real. You'll have access to the one-to-one advice sessions. We'll help you get to a stage where you can submit what's called an expression of interest, where you're showing an interest in bidding for business with a council, with a local authority. We'll support you with the writing process, and we'll also help you complete what's called a tender business model canvas. And this is a broader look, but a succinct way of assessing your business, both from internal, external factors, and financially. We'll look at your value proposition. How are you demonstrating what tangible value you're adding to the organization? And these sessions aren't just, well, they're one-off sessions, but we'll be engaging you throughout the program and have regular ongoing feedback. So it's literally, we're there to help you improve and take you forward in terms of your journey about getting a greater share of these contracts. So there's a lot of good stuff in the program. So first little exercise for you to do and help me understand your experience. I'd just like you to put something in the chat, which is essentially to give me an idea of the level of tendering knowledge and experience you have. So if you've never tendered before, just pop a 1 in there. If you've done a handful of tenders, it's a 2. And if you regularly submit bids and tenders, it's a 3. If you are a 2 or a 3, perhaps you can also just share your level of knowledge, experience, and success. So you win them all, fantastic. You win some, or you never win any. So if you can pop something in the chat, it'll just give me a clue as to what your level of experience is. So 1 moment. Okay, that's great. Thanks for participating. Secondly, you seem to have a variety of experience. Some that have never tendered, some that tendered regularly, some have reasonable return rate. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. Okay, so we've got a real mixture of experience, which is absolutely fine because there's going to be something for everyone in this session. So thank you for participating in that. So I want you to have a little think, first of all, about why organizations go to tender, because it takes a lot of time and effort on all sides, not just for you as suppliers, but also for the client. So why put yourself through that process, and what broadly are organizations looking for in a provider? So think about that for a moment. If you want to put something in the chat, that's absolutely fine. And as it says at the bottom, if you can put yourself into the mindset of the buyer and try and write your bid from their perspective, you're going to be in a much stronger position, in terms of understanding what's important to them, what problems you're solving, and writing it from a perspective of the actual client rather than your side. So just maybe think about that for 30 seconds. It's all good. People have had some experience in grant funding, okay. Right, okay. Give me 1 second. Right, okay, so let's have a look at some of the reasons that organizations do go out to tender. So firstly, particularly with local authorities, they're looking for an objective comparison. They'll ask the same questions to every supplier. So it's a level playing field for everyone, and it therefore should result in reduced risk in terms of supplier selection. Certainly with some contracts, again, particularly in local authorities, they have to go out to tender if the contract is over a certain size. They'll need to ensure they're complying with local policies, local legislation. And the fourth point is a key one. They're looking to achieve a sustainably competitive price. And that doesn't mean the lowest price. I think often I hear businesses saying to me, I need to put in the lowest possible price to win. Well, that's not true. You need to put in a competitive price. So you need to know your market as well. And they'll be looking for return on investment, of course. What value for money are they getting? And all these things form part of the evaluation process, which the procurement department will be looking at. They'll be looking at what sort of efficiencies you can deliver. Are you saving them? Can you show them ways of saving money, saving time? And more importantly, can you measure those benefits and efficiencies? If you can do that, it's much, much more powerful. There's a number of reasons. And let's look at some other factors to consider. First of all, do you have an innovative mindset? And what I mean by that is, do you think outside the box? Have you got a way of showing how you can drive higher value through their organization? I mean, just to be clear, all this feedback here comes from real contract evaluators. So it's not theoretical. This is real feedback we've had from businesses who are receiving tenders in from suppliers. They'll be looking for how you can prove you can carry out your work. Do what you say. What is your level of competence? How will you show that you can deliver your service? They'll be looking to see, do you take a collaborative approach? How do you communicate? How will you improve the service for the organization? And also importantly, they'll look for a partner that fits them culturally. You all know that people buy from you when they know you, they like you, they trust you, perhaps you've got similar views, perhaps you've got similar thought process. So look at the sort of cultural challenges or cultural aspect that the organization has, and you can research that, you can highlight that in your bid, and it all helps. They'll be looking for accurate and reliable management information that helps their organization. You have what's called a future-focused expertise. What I mean by that is, do you know what's important to the organization, not only now, but what's their medium-term strategy? What are the sort of challenges that are coming up for the organization in the next 12, 18, 24 months? Because if you can understand that, then they'll see that you're a partner that's looking forward as opposed to just trying to deal with the problem now. How do you deal with communication in terms of transparency and openness? Are you the sort of organization that when things go wrong, because we all know things go wrong in business, will you take accountability for getting it sorted? Do you have a problem-solving ethic? You think about different ways of resolving issues for the client. And the final point is ensuring satisfaction for the internal customer. What I mean by that, as I said, is that often you'll have procurement departments, evaluators who are managing the tender process on behalf of the end user within the council, within the organization. So their role is to basically meet the requirements of their internal customers. So there's a number of reasons why customers and clients go out for tender. And the more you can understand that, the stronger position you'll be in. So let's look at some of the basics to start with. These are things that you have to get right. It's not enough to win the tender, but it's to get you over that first hurdle, because with any tender process, they'll be looking to narrow down suppliers throughout the process. And your challenge as a supplier is always to get over that next hurdle. And then it's a case of how you build upon this first bit of information. Before I start, there's a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm just going to have a quick look at those. Thank you. How do you open at a given moment? Yep. Someone's asked us about where we can find the tenders, what are open, is there a portal? I'll handle all that in the presentation, so no problem at all on that. So just coming back to the administrative side of a tender process, there'll often be a supplier questionnaire. This is what I'd call, I suppose, basic information about you, your organization, your company, but follow it to the letter, follow it exactly. Make sure you complete every box that you've been asked to complete. There may be excuse me, there may be what's called a form of tender, particularly in the public sector. And this is a document which basically you're asked to sign, and essentially it's for you to confirm you've read everything and you agree with the terms and conditions. There may be what's called a non-collusion certificate to show that you basically produced your tender independently. You haven't colluded with anyone else. You'll often see a lot of different terminology: ITT, invitation to tender, request for information, request for proposal, re-qualification questionnaires. They're subtly different in terms of the type of service that the local authority are contracting for. And you can check out all these things on Google, no problem. You'll often be asked to provide copies of your accounts, your financials. There may be a minimum turnover threshold. If you don't meet that, you don't have to worry too much initially. You can think about partnering up. You'll often be asked for 3 references. And this might sound obvious, but essentially make sure you tell your referees in advance that you provide them with a reference, as a reference. Also, if you can provide a reference for someone who you've done some work for in a similar sector, in a similar area, fantastic. It makes it so much stronger. There'll be certain policy requirements. There may be things like health and safety, contingency planning. There will certainly be something which I'm sure a number of you have heard of called a social value policy. And this is something that you'll need to have in your armory. So what I mean by that is make sure you have a social value policy of some form. It doesn't have to be a 20-page document, but make sure you've got a way of demonstrating how you're helping and giving back to the local community, because that's all part of the community building process. There'll be a pricing template to complete as well. And the final one, which I've highlighted in bold, is make sure you plan and allow sufficient time, because the tendering process is quite detailed, it's quite complex. So set yourself up a simple spreadsheet. Make sure you agree some timelines, some accountability for who's doing what. Do you have people who can help you with the tender? And the other thing I would say is certainly make sure that you get someone to independently review and check your submission before you send it. Because if you've been working on it yourself for a number of times, you won't see the obvious. And finally, always work to 1 day before the deadline. A number of authorities have said to me they get calls from local business suppliers. If the deadline say 12 noon, basically saying we can't get the document to upload. It's 10 to 12. Just make sure you allow sufficient time. But all these things are basic, and your competitors will all be filling this in as well. So it's not enough to win the bid, it's how you move on from there. So let's talk a little bit about that. So I want to give you some of the elements of basically a winning bid. My role is to give you as many tools as I can to help you get better at bid writing. So it's a combination, as I say, of the right price, not the cheapest, the right price, and what I call these golden rules, which I'll talk to you about. So do you and have you answered the questions directly according to the evaluation criteria? The evaluators will literally be looking at their question, they'll be looking at your response, and they'll have a grid, and they'll be scoring it based on how thoroughly and completely you've answered the question. So have you done that thoroughly? Do you have a broader understanding of the needs of the client? I talked about medium-term strategy a few moments ago. Do you know where they're going 12, 18 months down the line? And do you reflect that in your response? Can you demonstrate that you've got a credible, competent solution? As in, how will you deliver the solution that you're saying? Have you articulated the benefits to the client? I often hear customers and suppliers talking about what they can do without translating it to how that adds value to the client. So we'll talk about that in a bit more detail shortly. Can you back it up with evidence? What evidence? Is it easy to find? We'll talk more about that as well. And finally, are you able to write in a clear, precise, lean way? Because the evaluators will have a lot of bids to review. So if you can write clearly and cleanly, it helps them in their evaluation process. That's the combination of things we're going to talk about this morning. So quite a lot to get through. So let's have a look at a basic fundamental rule of bidding. Firstly, excellent bids, excellent submissions will usually win you a contract. I'm sure most of you will know what might be coming next, because it's basically that poor bids will usually lose contracts. That might sound obvious, but the point I'm trying to make there is that if you're going to submit a tender, a bid, we know it takes time and effort. Do it well. There's no point doing it half-heartedly. There's no point filling in 3/4 and thinking, hopefully that'll be okay. It probably won't. So plan, do it well, do it properly, give yourself the greatest chance of success. So next little exercise for you to get involved with. And the fundamental question is, why should they choose you? What's your plan to submit a great bid? So think about that for a moment, pop some things in the chat. And the question is, why should they choose your company, your organization, over and above all your competition? So see if you can come up with 1 or 2 examples, pop them in the chat, because they've got lots of choices out there. So how are you going to stand out? So I'll give you a minute to pop something in the chat, and then we'll run through some ideas. Yep. And if you've got Ramiro, you've put in their value proposition. Absolutely. I mean, how do you demonstrate your value proposition? Yes, exactly. How do you provide extra tangible additional value? Can you demonstrate that? Can you measure it? So that's a great point, Ramiro. I'll give everyone else a couple of moments. There's a number of you here, so don't be shy in popping things in. Yeah, speed of delivery, exceeding requirements. That's a great one. Going over and above what you've been asked for. That's definitely a positive reason to choose you. Yeah, openness, honesty, integrity, all good things, all good reasons. Ramiro, you've asked about the evaluation grid. I'll talk to you about that in a moment. But typically, they're not available to suppliers, but there's a standard process. Okay. Oh, yeah. What accreditations have you got? You know, how strong is your branding? Yeah. Efficiency, effectiveness. How can you demonstrate that? Yeah. Listening to employee feedback. Fantastic. That's all good stuff. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you again for participating. That always makes it more interesting for me as well, and hopefully gives you a chance to give that some thought. So let me share with you some of the things that basically I've come across, why you could be chosen over and above your competitors. The first one is, how well do you actually know the client? Do you have an existing relationship? Like I said earlier, people buy from you when they know, like, and trust you. So, build those relationships. I was talking to a business yesterday, and essentially they had no existing relationship with their local council. So start building that relationship. Start getting in touch with the key people. We can signpost you to the key people. We'll talk about the Meet the Buyer event. You can meet the key buyers within the council in Hounslow. So start to build your relationship. That always helps if you've met someone. What evidence can you provide? Do you have case studies? Do you have testimonies? Do you have references? It's always much more powerful if a client says how good you are rather than you saying how good you are, because it's independent. And where can they find this evidence? Is it easily accessible? All well and good having it on your website, but is it on Google? That's the first place people look. Certainly the evaluators, when they're evaluating contract responses, they will look for evidence. And if they can't find it easily, they're busy people. They won't look too hard. Can you demonstrate you've got experience and expertise in the sector? When I was working in banking with local authorities, when we were fortunate enough to win a tender, we know that local authorities talk to each other. We know that they have forums where they meet up and they say, oh, did you know we've just moved our banking to Lloyd's Bank, for argument's sake, and they've done this well and that well and what have you. So they talk. So if you've done some work and you can demonstrate you've done work in the sector, that's powerful, and you've worked on similar contracts. And can you then show how you've added value? All these things help. What's the knowledge and experience of your team? What's the level of resource? But again, all your competitors will be claiming these types of things. So it's a case of, can you actually evidence it? Can you basically transfer that into language which allows the evaluators to score you more highly and then give them a reason to choose you? That's the challenge. So let's talk a little about understanding the needs and objectives. This might sound obvious, but it's fundamental to writing a successful bid, is making sure you're clear about what you're being asked and you've answered all elements of the question. The little fancy little diagram there is supposed to be demonstrating, again, try to put yourself into the mindset of the buyer, because basically, if you can do that and try to write your bid response from their perspective, you'll be in a much stronger position. So where can you understand initially what some of these objectives and needs are? I mean, there are 4 primary ways to start with. They'll tell us in the invitation to tender. So again, sounds obvious, but read the specification. It'll often be a pack of information that you'll receive. I know in my banking days, when we used to get a tender response, sometimes they were quite thick packs of information, and I would literally sort of take myself off into a room, metaphorically put a cold towel around my head, get a highlighter out, and literally go through and read all the spec in detail. So that's your first stage. You can ask questions, of course. Been a bit harder during COVID, but that's over now. So if you know people within the council, you know the procurement team, you can ask questions and you'll get answers. So start to build a dialogue with the suppliers, with the client. Start to build your relationship, because you know your competitors will be doing that. And if you have a relationship, it just gives you that slight competitive edge. So carry out research. I'll talk to you a little bit about research. The more you, excuse me, the more you know about your client, prospective client, the more you can improve your understanding, the stronger you'll be in terms of writing a competitive bid. And of course, there is a formal question and answer process, so you can use that process as well. But just be mindful that if you ask a question, the question and the response will be shared with all potential suppliers. So don't ask anything sensitive. Don't ask something that's been asked before. So make sure that you pay attention to detail, so you look professional rather than asking something that someone's already asked. So a number of ways you can increase your understanding of what their needs and objectives are. Okay, so here's a little analogy for you. If you are climbing a mountain, or you're planning to climb a mountain, you wouldn't just wake up one morning and Wednesday today, and say, at the weekend, I'm going to go and climb a mountain. You'd do some research, you'd prepare, you'd think about, what sort of equipment do I need? Who's done it before? What are the weather conditions? What obstacles do they come across? How do they do it? Which face do they go up? Do I have the right equipment? Do I have the right support? Who can support me? Who's done it before well? And the point I'm making there is, when you're trying to demonstrate your solution to the client, to the prospective client, make sure you can clearly explain how you're going to deliver it. What are the various steps? Who's going to be involved in the process? Where are you going to deliver the solution? How are you going to do it in terms of resource? If you can articulate that in a clear way, demonstrate your planning, demonstrate your approach and thought process, you're going to be in a much stronger position. Can you demonstrate what options you've considered? Why you've chosen a particular option and solution for the client? What are the other options that you considered and discounted? So it's all about the how question. How will you demonstrate you have a credible solution? Okay, so now let's move on to something else, which is always an interesting one, and that's called, I'm sure you know, USP. What makes you different? Now, I'm sure you've heard the term USP, it's unique selling proposition. And the word unique is often used too commonly. People talk about being partially unique. People talk about being fairly unique, but it's not. It's either unique or it's not. As you can see from the definition, it says, of which there is only one, unmatched, unequal, having no like, equal, or parallel. But it's quite difficult sometimes to be unique, isn't it? When I talk to businesses, for example, I might say to them, so tell me, what's unique about you? What's unique about your business? And a number of them will say, well, we provide great customer service. Well, I'm sorry, guys and girls, but let me tell you, that's not a unique selling proposition. So I've never spoken to a small business who says we provide poor service. So the business I spoke to probably about a year ago now, he had a very unique selling proposition in so much as they had more 5-star Google reviews than any of their competition. So that is unique. That's something that stands you out over and above your competition. And I guess another way of overcoming a lack of being unique is to be innovative, be different in terms of what's a standard approach. So, for example, in my banking days, we had an objective to say you have to answer the phone within 3 rings. You might have an objective to say we return all our messages within an hour or within the day, on the same day. So these are what we call positive discriminators. They stand you out over and above your competition. You demonstrate a way that you can do something standard, something that all clients do differently, better, quicker, more efficiently, whatever that might be. So there are ways of demonstrating and standing out and being unique by doing things better than everyone else is doing. Okay, so what? This is a golden rule in my mind. How will your solution make things better for the client? Are you going to save them time? Are you reducing cost? Are you improving a process? What is your proposition going to bring in terms of benefits? So as it says in a bit of a cheesy way, but it's true. Your proposition must pass the so what test. It's no good giving examples of all the great things your company can do, your organization can do, unless it translates to a benefit for the client. So let's just talk a little bit about some general benefits in a moment. And one way of thinking it is, you've all heard sort of features and benefits as a term, but try and link and explain what you do by adding the phrase, which means that. So for example, you might say, we've worked on a similar contract, which means that we've learned and adapted our solution to make it more cost effective for you. So as I said, if you can show ways of benefiting, that's going to be much more powerful. So let's just look at a few generic benefits briefly. These are just some examples that, you can use to show in your submission that you're doing things better for the client. So are you saving management time? All management teams haven't got enough time. Everyone's busy. Can you show them you can save some time? Fantastic. Cost is always a challenge. Can you reduce costs? Can you reduce risk? Staff morale. Does your solution show a way of boosting, improving staff morale? Can you drive up higher margins, increase productivity? Key thing now is like reducing waste. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Do you reduce the environmental impact? Can you demonstrate a way of doing that? This is a key issue now, certainly for everyone in business, not just for councils, not just for larger organizations. And we run a particular session on that, which I will talk to you about in a moment. Can you show a way of improving the skill levels of staff, reduce staff turnover, improve levels of quality? These are all generic but important ways that if you can demonstrate you can benefit the client, you're going to be in a strong position. And try and add something to those benefits. And what I mean by that is, if you can show a way of measuring, demonstrating, quantifying how that benefit is going to save the company time, it gives a much greater perception of value. So if you can show these things and demonstrate them, you're going to be in a much stronger way, much stronger position to submit that winning bid, showing how you can tangibly add value. Okay, so let's just recap briefly. So we've understood the requirements, we've read the questions properly, we've started to do some research on the client, we're starting to talk and build relationships with the clients, explain how we can meet their needs, articulate the benefits, and that's great. How do you make your story more believable? I guess it's like anything, it's like being in court, you have to give evidence. So let's talk a little bit about evidence now. Because people buy what they believe in. So if you can provide evidence of what you can do, it's so much stronger. I don't know about you, but certainly whenever I go on holiday, before I book my hotel, I'm straight onto a TripAdvisor, checking out all the reviews when I get there. And if I want to go to a restaurant, I'm looking at basically either a recommendation from the hotel, or I'll go again onto local websites, find out what people are saying. It's much, you can't take them all as gospel, we know that, but nevertheless, we know that if independent clients, if independent people are saying a restaurant's great, your business is great, your customer service is great, it's just so much more powerful than you saying it. So let's just look at the different types of evidence briefly, because there's a lot you can do. The strongest form of evidence, like I've just said, is objective, independent evidence. So do you have accreditations? Do you have ISO 9001 accreditation, for example, standards? Do you have independent surveys that have been done, market research of your business? Do you have a strong audit report? Testimonials, independent? Have you got some press articles that have been written about what you do? Have you won awards, for example? If you're really strong, do you provide financial guarantees? I mean, these are all independent ways of strengthening your case in terms of proving how good you are. And then you have what's called institutional evidence or business evidence. So have you got case studies? Yeah, you produced them yourselves, but that's absolutely fine because it still gives and demonstrates how you've helped a client. Can you demonstrate you've got specific operating procedures, project management methodology, for example? Have you managed projects similarly like this in the past? Can you demonstrate you've got a process to show you can do it successfully? It's less strong than the objective evidence, but it still strengthens your case. And what sort of company evidence do you have? What statements do you have in terms of showing that you can be trusted? Have you given your opinions or your views on certain things within the sector? Your own marketing material, what policies internally you have in place? Those all count in terms of convincing a client that you have good processes and good, strong procedures in place. Do you have CVs, bios? I mean, certainly when you're submitting a tender, I wouldn't say attach a CV, but if they say to you, how many are in your delivery team, and there are 6 people, there's absolutely no harm in including a 2 or 3 line bio with even a picture, because that makes it a bit more real. It just strengthens your case and makes you more human in terms of your submission. And is there sector evidence? What I mean by that is, do you work in a sector that's regulated, where you have standard industry procedures? Do you have service level agreements in place? There are standards, which I'm sure you know, by which you operate. Again, these will be common pieces of evidence that all companies working in your sector will rely on, but it's still all helpful. Service level agreements can be something that's a little bit more unique. And all this is ammunition that you can use. And finally, operational evidence. What I mean by that is, are you the existing supplier? Because if you are, that should put you in a stronger position. I certainly hear businesses saying, well, the council, they'll typically give the business to the existing supplier. Well, it's not true. Certainly, if you are the existing supplier, you should be in a stronger position, providing you've delivered well. So the sort of things you can demonstrate as an incumbent and existing supplier is, what was the transition process you undertook to implement your solution? What sort of performance information do you have which you provided the client during the term of the contract? Did you provide some regular reporting? How helpful were they? How user-friendly was the management information? Have you had data from the customer, end users, other stakeholders, in terms of how satisfied they were with what you've done? Do you have improvement? Do you have information on improvements, added value, innovative ideas that you came up, positive effects that you had on the organization? And when you faced issues, challenges, what did you do? How did you resolve them? And finally, do you have some positive quotes and customer testimonials and commendations from both end users and stakeholders? So if you are the existing supplier, you should be in a slightly stronger position if you've handled the contract effectively and well. So some brief rules about evidence. It should be relevant. So like I said earlier, if you're bidding for a local authority contract and you've done work with another local authority, then, provide evidence of that sort. It should be relevant to the bid, to the client, to the market and the service. It should be current. Again, if I'm going online and I'm looking for feedback on a restaurant or a hotel, if the reviews are like 2 days, 3 days, a week ago, I'm thinking, that's great. If they're like 6 months ago, I'm immediately questioning, thinking, why is it 6 months old? What's happened in the last 6 months? So spend your time building that and developing that evidence in advance, because evaluating teams, they will always look for evidence. So build it into your planning process, get some case studies, because all those things will strengthen your case when you make your submission, if you've got all the pieces of the puzzle, shall we say, in place already. Okay, so let's talk a little about scoring briefly. I think someone asked about that earlier. There is a grid, essentially, that all evaluators will work to. There's not a common grid, but essentially, typically, you might have a 0 to 5 scale, and there'll be some definitions within each range as to what you need to fulfill to get a certain score. So clearly, if it's a 0, you either haven't answered the question, you've answered it very superficially, you haven't met the objectives, and obviously at the other end of the scale, in terms of 4 or 5, you've answered it thoroughly, you've demonstrated the benefits, you've given some evidence, you showed how you can measure the value you're going to add. So firstly, correctly identifying all the elements of a question is critical. So I mean, this sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how many suppliers potentially fall down. Read the question carefully and make sure you've covered and understood all elements, and that will help you structure your answer more comprehensively, because you're just trying to find ways of scoring higher. Because if you miss part of the answer, then you're going to have a lower score. And like I said, there's no standard evaluation process. And the other thing to sort of bear in mind is sometimes scores will be weighted. So what I mean by that is that not every answer has a similar weighting. So you might have a tender where they say 60% of the weighting is on price and 40% is on the service and the quality. So on that basis, you know that price is actually going to be more important. And if it's the other way around, you can understand that they're looking very much for a more comprehensive solution, but they're more open in terms of what they're prepared to pay. Okay, I'm just have a quick look at the chat because there's a couple of questions and comments in there. Yes, what I do is the same question gets called. Yeah, Astrid's asked the question about what she does. What can you do if you answer the same question in one way and it's scored in one way on one bid and less on the other? I guess the thing there is, Astrid, is that basically the evaluators are human. They will work to a grid, but like I said, there's no standard template grid. So there is a slight element of subjectivity, I suppose, in terms of how they assess your response. But as long as you answer it as fully and comprehensively as possible, you should be at the top end of the scale. Whether it's a 4 or a 5, hopefully you'll be at the top end. And I'm just going to have a look in the Q&A because there's a couple of questions. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's nothing new in there. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on. Next exercise for you to have a little go at. And it's all about researching the client and getting a better understanding of the client. Because like I said earlier, the more you know about your client, the better. So I'd like you to have a little think about two things. And that is, what are the potential sources of information on a customer? And when you're looking for information, what are you actually looking for? So again, if you could just jot some things down in the chat while I have a little sip of water, I'll give you a minute to do that. And then we'll run through some of the examples that I've come across during my time. So feel free to put things in the chat. What sources of information are there? There are lots out there, I'm sure you know. And what information should you be looking for? Don't be shy, people. Yep, the chat is now moving up, so that's great. Thank you very much. Yep, that's the first starting point. Websites, where they advertise. Yep. Yep, online, different search engines. Yep, absolutely true. Yep, yep. You can find stuff out from the current suppliers. Yep, definitely. Yeah, Company's House, another good one. Yep, it's a limited company. There'll be information on there. Yeah, Wikipedia. Yep, yep. You're all right, basically. There's lots of good information. Yep, database providers. Yep, yep. Social media, of course. Yep. No, fantastic. There's lots of good stuff there. Okay, I'm going to move on and just sort of share some things with you because I'm just conscious of time. So yeah, the customer's website. I mean, if you go onto the Brand Union website, you'll see a little bit about us as individual advisors. It will show you what's important to us. Social media, absolutely right. Yeah, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Facebook, there are a whole host of different social media sources we can find out about the client. So let's just have a look at some of those sources briefly. So of course, the bid document, that's the key document that leads our thinking. What's your internal resource and knowledge? Have you done some work with the client before? Have you had previous bids? If you did, what was the feedback? Someone talked about sort of staff reviews, so things like Glassdoor, where staff members are able to give feedback about their organisation. There are local events, conferences, Meet the Buyer event we're going to be running in a couple of weeks' time. Credit reference agencies, competitor websites. There are a huge number of sources in terms of finding out more about the client. And as I said, the more you know, the better. And there are things like basically strategy documents. What's their vision and value? What is important to them as a client? What are their opportunities and what are their challenges at the moment, for example? What things are critical to them? What language do they use? Because if you can reflect this back in your bid, it just all makes it a little bit warmer. It all makes it a bit personal. has the chief executive said something important? You know, what are their personal motivations? All these things will help you to create a bid that's more personalized and shows a knowledge of the client, and that will stand you in good stead. Let me be clear on that. Okay, so let's talk a little about writing now. And basically what I'm saying here is less is more. And what I mean by that is the evaluation team, they're busy people. They've got lots of tender responses. So making their job easier is important for them. It's a benefit. It's a differentiator. So write accurately, clearly, and concisely. Very quick example to share with you. In my banking days, one of my roles was when I was dealing with international banks, was we had to write a one-page brief for when the chief executives met for a high-powered meeting. The information you had to condense that down from was files that were a foot deep, you know. And let me tell you, getting the relevant information onto one page is difficult. So it's a skill, it's a differentiator. If you can write in a style which is concise and clear and doesn't have too much repetition. So less is more, definitely. And you could be bidding to a client that you don't even know. So, you know, just make their job easier. Don't distract them with too much information, because by writing, as it said here, clearly, accurately, positively, and leanly, it'll make it so much more easy for the reader, for the evaluator. And it is a potential differentiator. So it's a skill, Use less words if you can. Like I said earlier, if you get someone independently to review it, they might be able to cut out a few additional words. So that is an important thing to keep in mind. Just going to have a quick look at the chat because there's another couple of things. Yeah, nothing too smart. Yeah, we should be finished by just after 12:15 at the very latest, but I suspect earlier. So in summary, hang on a minute, let's just technology. That's great. These are the sort of things you've looked at. You've complied with the instructions. You've read all the questions carefully. Okay. You've demonstrated why you, how are you standing out? You've focused on the client. You've demonstrated an understanding of them, their business. Just remember, as it says in bold, it's all about the client. It's not about you, your business, how great you do stuff. That's good, but how does that help the client? As I said earlier, which means that. You've explained your approach. You've done that clearly, and you explained clearly the benefits. You showed how you can help. You've reviewed the document independently, not just for errors, but as I said, does it read well? You've got a high quality response. You've got evidence. You've got case studies. If you can do all that, then you're going to be well on the way to writing a compelling and winning bid. So that's just about the end of the technical stuff. But this is about real opportunities as well. So I want to just share with you a couple of things on a few slides now, which Hounslow have been kind enough to give to us, which is essentially what have they got coming up in terms of business that you can bid for. So you can see from the slide that the council will be procuring services to the value of over £500 million in the next couple of years, give or take. And the breakdown of that, as you can see, is 55% of the projects are what they call works, which is generally development, housing, construction, those sort of projects, and 36% are projects and 9% are goods. And there's a much greater and more detailed breakdown that you can get from the procurement departments, from the council website, of course. But the point I'm making there is there is a huge amount of spend that the council will be making over the next year or two. And the key is just to find out, and I'll show you how, where you can get involved, how you can get involved with certain services, certain problems, certain things that they're procuring. So that slide's a little bit small, but basically what it shows is a breakdown of the various areas. And as you can see, this area of development, construction, maintenance, repairs is the biggest area of spend. The area in red is really all the various other services. And there's also a breakdown in terms of HR services, healthcare. It excludes social care because those contracts are dealt with sometimes directly with families, with the care agencies. But other than that, it covers all the council spend sectors in the coming couple of years. So someone was asking about how you access opportunities. We'll just give you some background first of all. As it says on the first bullet point, nearly 90% of contracts were available openly. What it means by that is that, they're not going to someone that they're dealing with already. They're putting them out to tender through the competitive tender process, and every independent supplier has an opportunity to bid for them. Certainly with some smaller contracts, for example, when they're under £75,000, they may be sent to a limited number of suppliers that they know. The officer within the council, who's like a commissioner, they can select certain suppliers to actually bid. They're like framework agreements. And under a certain smaller value, the smaller contract, they can be awarded directly without formal tender. But the point there is they won't be awarding the contracts to you individually if they don't know you. So do start building those relationships. Do start getting an understanding of what's important to the council. In terms of where they advertise, Hounslow use London tenders to advertise opportunities. It's a web-based system. If you're not registered on it as a local business, I would get yourself on there. It's used by, as you can see, a number of the local London boroughs, and there are various other opportunities that are advertised on portals like Contract Finder, particularly for public sector organisations. And like, as you say, have those conversations with the council, have the conversations with independent private sector organisations to get an idea of where they advertise, what's coming up. You can have those conversations. There's nothing stopping you. So build those relationships. So there are definitely real opportunities out there for local businesses. Okay, let me just talk briefly about some of the benefits of the program. So we've had the launch, as you'll know, we're having the initial bidding and tendering webinar today. The one I wanted to talk about a bit more is the Meet the Buyer event on the 22nd of February. This is an excellent opportunity for you as local businesses to meet key people from the council. We've got representation also from Heathrow Airport, from Ealing Council as well. We ran a very similar event about a month ago on the Hammersmith project I was working, and you get 50, 60, hopefully 70 businesses together. It's a great networking opportunity. You get to meet key people within the council. The top sort of procurement guy will be there. Forgive me, his name escapes me. I think it's David Warboy. But you're going to have senior people from the council, senior people from private sector organisations, which you can meet. You can ask them questions. So I would certainly encourage you as local businesses to register for that event, which is at the Holiday Inn in Brentford. In terms of the other webinars, we've got one on building a sustainable tender business model. That's a wider look at your business. Talk about things like your USP, your value proposition, your strategy, how you produce innovative solutions and ideas. So again, useful information there. I'll be running a second webinar on the 16th of March, very much geared towards public sector contracts. And the final one is the sort of circular economy and developing key partnerships. That's a key one, which is all about how SMEs tackle global challenges. And you might think, well, I'm too small to get involved in that. But actually, things like climate change, waste, recycling, sustainability, how to better manage and use your resources. Everyone can make a difference, no matter how small. I'm not being Greta Thunberg here, but essentially every business needs to have some sort of sustainability angle in terms of how they're helping the economy, the environment. And the final thing, which is really, really a big benefit of the program, is these one-to-one online sessions. Let me just talk about that for a moment. These are very structured sessions, essentially. You get 2 sessions, and they're 1 hour each. And essentially, we'll look at all the steps to take you through the bidding and tendering process and some wider challenges within your business. We'll help you get to a point where you're more confident with bidding and tendering. And they're not just a bit of a chat. They're structured sessions with agreed actions and outcomes at the end. They're all run by experts who have knowledge of bidding and tendering. And as I say that, Charlie has just appeared on the screen. Charlie's managing the project on behalf of Brandon. So Charlie, do you want to add anything to that? I'll share your contact details in a minute, but feel free to add anything on the one-to-ones that you want to.
Yes, thank you, Noshir. Yes, to everybody on the call, I would say that what Noshir has done is given you some great generic information. He said, you need to do this, you need to do that, and you need to do the other, so that you write a winning bid. And what we help you do in the one-to-ones is we bring it down to you, to your business. So if you say, oh, well, I know Noshir told me that I've got to do this, but how do I do it? How do I do it for my business? And in the one-to-ones, there's 2 of them. We spend an hour each, and it's myself or a colleague, Elsa, who'll be doing it. And it is very personal to you and your business, because we want you to win the tenders that you go for. So that's what the one-to-ones are all about. And myself and Elsa will hopefully be contacting you in the next few days so that we can get the first one-to-one organised and in our diaries. So thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you all.
Great stuff. Thanks for that, Charlie. And as on cue, there are Charlie's details up on the screen there. If you want to book a session, I would encourage you to do it. Do get in touch with Charlie. He talks on the phone as well as email, so you can do either. And essentially, yeah, we've had great feedback on the ones that we run for the council in Hammersmith. So I would encourage you to get involved with those. They're, as I say, personal to you and your business, and will help you get to a point of hopefully submitting winning bids. Right, well, that's just about it. Thank you for staying the course. I hope you found that useful. I hope you've written down something that you're going to do as a result of spending an hour listening to me tell you about all this hopefully useful things. And do feel free to put some feedback in the chat, good, bad, indifferent. We've got broad shoulders, but no, on a serious note, please do let us know what you thought about this. And like I said earlier, definitely do get signed up to come to the Meet the Buyer event, because that's a real live face-to-face event where you can meet key people from the council. That's just about it for me. I'll stay around for a few minutes here. If there's any other questions that people want to put in the Q&A, feel free to do that. Alternatively, you can contact me independently. I'm always happy to talk. Charlie's also the same. We're old school. We like talking. Yeah, thank you for your attendance. I hope you found it useful. I hope we'll be seeing you again, certainly from my perspective, on the 16th of March. And yeah, any feedback or questions, I'll stay around for a couple of minutes now until just to give you a chance if there's anything you want to add. Charlie, I don't know if you want to add anything more, but failing that, I'll just leave it open for a minute or so and just wish you all a great day.
I don't have anything else to add. Thank you, Noshir.
Excellent. That's good. Thanks for the feedback, Kevin. Thanks for the feedback, Ashwani. Appreciate it's always good to know that it's been useful. One of these people that likes to sort of add some value as well, hopefully. Yeah, thanks, Ramiro. Appreciate that. Good. Okay, well, I'll literally sort of give it another 30 seconds or so as the numbers are going down, and wind it up, and Charlie will look forward to talking to you soon. Okay, everyone, have a great day. Thanks again for your time, and look forward to seeing you again in a month's time. All the best.
And we will
Bye.
be in touch. Thank you. Bye.